folks, this is Every Brilliant Thing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The list began after her first attempt. A list of everything brilliant about the world, everything worth living for. Number 1, ice cream. Number 2, water fights. Number 3, staying up past your bedtime and being allowed to watch TV. Number 4, the color yellow. Number 5, things with stripes. Number 6, roller coasters. And number 7, people falling over. All things that, at 7, I thought were wonderful, but not things Mum would necessarily agree with. The list began on the 9th of November, 2005. I'd been picked up late from school and taken to the hospital, which is where my mother was. And up until that moment, my only experience of death was that of my dog, Sherlock Bones. I'm gonna ask you to be the vet for a moment. Can you? Yep. Just come here. I won't ask you too much, just stand here. Okay, so, and does anyone have a coat I could borrow? Like a sweater? Thank you. Sherlock Bones is older than me, and he was a central part of my existence. But one day he got really sick, so the vet had to come around to put him down. So, you're the vet, and I'm me, the 7-year-old girl. And this here, this is Sherlock Bones. Does anybody have a pen or a pencil I could use? I got one. So this pen is the needle, and inside is an anesthetic called pentobarbital. And the dose is large enough to put the dog to sleep, then depress his brain, respiratory and circulatory systems, and put him to sleep forever. So, when you're ready, I want you to come here and inject Sherlock Bones in the thigh. No, the thigh! Now there is one hard and fast rule when euthanizing a child's pet, and that is you really mustn't laugh while you do it. It totally changes the tone of the situation, so maybe just take a deep breath, and when you're ready, come inject Sherlock Bones in the thigh. Now stroke his little head. I held Sherlock Bones, who I'd known my entire life. I held him as he died. Could someone with a watch tell me when 30 seconds has passed? I thought about the walk we had had that morning. The smell of him in my bedroom, his toys in the living room, his bed under the stairs, and his recently opened packet of dry food. All things that could now be thrown away. He became lighter or heavier? I don't know, but different. And that was my first experience of death. A loved one becoming an object and being taken away forever. Dad had picked me up late from school, and normally it was my mom who picked me up, and normally she was on time. But this time, it was Dad. And he brought me up. He pulled up and opened the passenger seat window. Can you take me home, Dad? Or can I get you to my dad's seat and pull up a chair beside me, please? back seat because I make things sticky. But today, when Dad pulled up, he opened the passenger seat. He sat in the front seat, and he looked at me. I looked at him. When something bad happens, your body can process it before your brain can. The stress hormones, cortisol, and adrenaline flood through your body, and it feels like there's a trap door opening beneath you. I sat in the front seat. He had the window down. We smoked at the window, we listened to the radio. And he said, "We're going to the hospital." Because that's where my mother was. And I didn't understand it. So what's actually gonna happen is you're gonna be me, and I'm gonna be my dad. And you have to just say why, okay? Okay. Put on your seatbelt. Why? Because we're going to the hospital. Why? Because that's where your mother is. Why? Because things can be dangerous sometimes. Why? Because people don't always pay attention. Why? Because there's a lot to think about. There's relationships to sustain and work to do, and there's never enough time to do it all. Why? Because there's only 24 hours in a day. Why? Because that's how long it takes for the Earth to rotate. Why? I don't know. Why? Because I don't know everything. Why? Because it's impossible to know everything. Why? Because if we knew everything, then life would be unlivable. Why? Because then we would have no use to use our imaginations. There would be no creativity, no discovery, no mystery. And if we didn't have our imaginations, it would just be unbearable. Why? Because in order to live in the present, you must be able to imagine a future that is better than the past. Why? Because that is what hope is. And without hope, we couldn't go on. Why? Just put on your seatbelt. Why? Because we're going to the hospital. Why? Because that's where your mother is. Why? Because she's sad. Why? She hurt herself because she can't see anything worth living for. Why? I don't know. Why? I just don't. Why? Put on your seatbelt. Why? Because we're going to the hospital. Why? Because your mother can't see anything worth living for. Why? At least that's how I like to remember it. But what he really said was, "Your mother's done something stupid."
Your mother's done something stupid.
I didn't know what that meant. When I got to the hospital, my mom saw me and said, "Not her." So I had to sit in the corridor next to an old couple who bought me chocolate and juice from the machine. And I'm not sure when I had originally thought of the list, but it was here with the old couple that I started to write it down. Number 1, ice cream. Number 2, water fights. Number 3, staying up past your bedtime and being allowed to watch TV. Number 4, the color yellow. Number 5, things with stripes. Number 6, roller coasters. Number 7, people falling over. Number 8, juice. Number 9, chocolate. And number 10, kind old people who aren't weird and don't smell unusual. Dad was in with Mom for a long time, and when he came out, I followed him down the corridor. I followed him out the hospital. I followed him to his car. I followed him up the driveway. I followed him up the hallway. I followed him up the stairs to his study, where he shut the door, and before I could follow him in. I waited to see what kind of music he'd put on. I knew the rules. If it was was the kind of, if it was a woman singing, I could go in.
This Sunday with shadows I
And if it was the kind of music you could sing and dance to, I could go in, but I ran the risk of being hugged and spun around in his chair. But perhaps if nobody was speaking, it meant that Dad was quiet, was working, so I should be quiet. And if it sounded like all the instruments were just falling down the stairs, it meant that I should leave him alone. So, outside his study, I waited. I went downstairs and made myself some dinner. A ham and mayo sandwich, just without any ham. I sat in front of the TV and continued with the list. It occurred to me that the list should be presented in no particular order. There was no example of saying that, for example, Danger Mouse was any better than Spaghetti Bolognese. Number 23, Danger Mouse. Number 24, Spaghetti Bolognese. Number 25, wearing a cape. Number 26, peeing in the sea and nobody knows. I stayed up late writing. I fell asleep in the living room, and Dad must have carried me upstairs. Mom didn't come home for a week or so, and while she was gone, I talked to the school counselor, who was actually just Miss Patterson from upper school, but she was the kind of woman that you would look at and immediately trust. I'm gonna ask you to be Miss Patterson if that's okay. So, what Miss Patterson would do, and it sounds weird, but remember this was the 2000s and she got results, is she would take off her shoe, and then she would take off her sock, and she would put it on her hand, and she had a little sock puppet dog named, what was it named again?
Ringo.
Ringo, right, that's amazing. And Ringo would ask questions like, how are you feeling?
How are you feeling?
I'm doing well, Ringo, how are you?
I'm good.
What kind of dog are you? You're brilliant.
I don't know.
That's pretty cool. When I was younger, I had a dog named Sherlock Bones. He was a cross between a border collie and a Doberman, because a Doberman and a border collie were neighbors and there was a very low hedge. You're brilliant. Can I put you on my list?
Okay.
164. Ringo the sock dog. Have I told you about my list?
I think so.
Well, I'm making a list of 1,000 brilliant things. I'm not quite sure, but I think I might be a genius.
Very interesting.
Well, it was so great talking to you, but I'm gonna go now. Thanks for talking to me, Ringo. Mom came home eventually, and by the time she got back, the list was 8 pages long and had 314 things on it. And it was titled, Every Brilliant Thing. And I put it on her pillow. She never talked to me about it, but I knew she read it because she corrected my spelling. And I continued to speak with Miss Patterson once a week, and then once every 2 weeks, and then once a month, and then one day I left and I never saw them again. But I don't want to make it sound like my mother was a monster or that my childhood was horrible, because it wasn't. we had a piano in our kitchen. And it wasn't even a big kitchen, but it was the warmest room in the house. We would all gather around the piano and sing soul songs. And there's this one song, Drown in My Own Tears by Ray Charles. And we would just sing it together and it sent shivers down my spine. The way he says you gets me every time, like it's coming out of somebody else. We all used to howl it like wolves. Number 313, having a piano in the kitchen. Number 314, the way that Ray Charles sings, you!
I forgot about the list until her second attempt just over 10 years later. Dad picked me up halfway through chemistry. That same trapdoor feeling. Fight or flight. The same wordless drive to the hospital. As a teenager, I dealt with it less well. I wore my heart on my sleeve. The night she came home, she said that if it weren't for the pineapple and ham pizza lining her stomach, she'd be dead. And to her, I said, "You took 3 weeks worth of antidepressants, a packet of aspirin, and half a tub of antihistamines. You're probably healthier than I am. If you're going to kill yourself, go jump off a bridge." Rather than storm off, I started to shovel food into my mouth. I had spent ages on this meal, and I was furious that she was just sitting there letting it go to waste. Then, there was a moment of absolute deafening silence, and then she started to laugh. It was such a genuine laugh that, after a while, I found myself joining in. Dad got up and went to the study to listen to his records. Eventually, I got up and went to my room. I started packing up all the things I wanted to keep and throwing away the things I didn't. I started shaking. Have you ever had that? When you notice your hands are shaking and your breathing is deeper and you realize that I'm really upset. I must be really upset. And then, in a box, under some sticker albums and shoelaces, I found the list. I began to read it through. 1. Ice cream. The younger me had dealt with this a lot better. She wasn't so self-righteous. She was hopeful. Naive, of course, but hopeful. So, I picked up a pen and I left off where that little girl had left off. 315, the smell of old books. 360, Andre Agassi. 317, the even-numbered Star Trek films. 318, Burning Things. 319, laughing so hard you shoot milk out of your nose. 320, making up after an argument. 'Next morning, I went and I sat on the end of my mom's bed, and I began to read the list to her. 516, winning something. She got up, and I followed it, reading much louder. 517, knowing someone well enough to get them to check your teeth for broccoli. 518, when idioms coincide with real-life occurrences, such as waking up, smelling coffee, then simultaneously thinking of something. 521, the word plinth. $575 piglets. 654 Marion Brando. I started leaving notes around the house, and eventually in the mornings I would wake up and see a small stack of papers. On her bed, I wrote 11. Bed. On her dresser was 761, deciding you're not too old to climb trees. $823. Skinny dipping. The next week, Dad took me back to university. It was weird. I posted the list to my mom anonymously, and when I came home that Christmas, it was on my desk in my favorite childhood book. I forgot about the book, and then, the week before I left university after Christmas, 992. Knowing to jangle the keys at the wildlife park if you want the otters to come. 993. Having dessert as a main course. 994. Hairdressers who listen to you a lot. Then, the list went on. 999. Sunlight. Dad drove me back to university. We didn't do much. We just sat there and listened to the radio. He ended up giving me a box of his favorite records. I wanted to ask him why, but I knew better than that. I was quite shy at university. I didn't socialize much. I would avoid lectures and seminars to listen to records in my room. But there was always this one lecture series that I never missed. It was led by someone's books I had read and loved and inspired me to take the course in the first place. Would you mind being my lecturer? It's just that you look a lot like her. Just stand up here. Now, this particular book we were studying was written by... Honestly, I don't care. Now, what she would do at the start of the lecture, she would hold the book aloft, and she would leave a long, dramatic pause, and when she felt like she had everyone's undivided attention, she would give a very detailed description of what the book was about.
In Johann Wolfgang von Goethe's timeless masterpiece, the sorrows of young Werther readers are transported into the tumultuous world of unrequited love, existential anguish, and the relentless pursuit of passion.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yes?
Are you saying that this specific book caused people to take their own lives?
Yes.
You want us to read that book?
Yes.
I left the lecture and I went to the library. I read up on social conscience, divorce, obesity, suicide. We're all subconsciously affected by the behavior of our peers. I read an article that the Samaritans had published. It's a set of guidelines. They're this. Don't provide technical details. Never suggest that a method is quick, easy, painless, or certain to result in death. Avoid dramatic headline terms like suicide epidemic or hotspot. Avoid sensational pictures or videos. Avoid excessive detail. Avoid using the word commit. Don't describe deaths by suicide as successful. Don't publish suicide notes. Don't publish on the front page. Don't ignore the complex realities of suicide and its impact on those left behind. Don't describe deaths as successful. Include reference reports to the Samaritans. Don't speculate on the reason. That's crucial. Don't supply simplistic reasons such as he lost her job or she'd recently become bankrupt. You know, I read the book. The Sorrows of the Young Weather. It was shit. Well, I didn't connect with it. At least I hadn't. Until I locked eyes with the only other girl who was always in the library. For days on end, we would stare at each other and then look away as if blinded by the sun. For the first time in my life, I understood the references to pop songs. Can I move you? Just sit there. I'll move you. Can you just take that? Hi. What's your name? Heidi. No. In real life, her name was Sam. What's your name? Sam. What are you reading? Oh, I forgot. We're in a library. We kind of need some books.
I have a book.
What are you reading?
The book.
What's it about?
Mom's talking about Book of Boogie 2006. Deserves a place on the shame shelf of the Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. Poison became a classic. Zach doesn't sugarcoat anything, but he makes the open, gloomy subject bearable in the same way Kurt Vaughn did. Absorbing and searing.
Really interesting. In fact, I'm reading Perks of Being a Wallflower. You know, it used to be one of my favorite childhood books. It's about a high school kid growing up in high school. Yeah, it's actually really good. In fact, why don't I lend it to you? And then I'll read this, and then we can meet up in the library, or maybe we can go get a coffee, or I had a date. Yes! For weeks, me and Sam would meet up in the library or at coffee shops, and we would discuss books. Probably learned more from the books Sam gave me than in any of my lecture courses. And then one day, she gave me back one of my favorite childhood books and said,
Really interesting reading. There's something really interesting in this book. And I want you to read.
now, this had confused me because I'd already read the book. I lent it to her. Because I'm an idiot, I didn't work out that was code until weeks later. When I opened up the book, the list dropped out. I was mortified. I had never told anybody about my mother. There would be times where I'd be at school and I wouldn't have socks on in my shoes, or I would forget my lunch, and I didn't want people to think that because of my mother. And honestly, this was just a stupid, childish list that I thought could hardwire combat depression. I got so angry I went to rip the list in half. And then I noticed someone else's handwriting. 1000. When people lend you books. 1001. When someone actually reads the books you give them. 1002. When you learn something about someone that surprises you but makes total sense. 1003. Realizing for the first time that someone is occupying your every waking thought, making it hard to sleep, eat, or concentrate. 1004. Finding a way to say that this in a way which doesn't make any sense, but if I don't say something now, it'll never happen. 1005. Writing about yourself in the third person. I have some advice for anyone who's been contemplating suicide. It's very simple. It's this. Don't do it. Things get better. They might not always get brilliant, but they get better. So, I decided I was going to continue the list. With Sam's inspiration, of course. 1006. Surprises. 1007. The fact that sometimes there's a perfect song to match exactly how you're feeling. 1008. Dancing in private. Whoa! 1009. which articulates exactly how you feel, but lacks the words to actually express it.
Just move on toward your destination. Though you may find
I kept going until the sun came up. 1,427. Not worrying about how much money you're spending on a holiday, because all international currency looks like monopoly money. 1,654. Christopher Walken's voice. 1,655. Christopher Walken's hair. 1,857. Planning a declaration of love. 2,000. Coffee. Oh, I'm too short. Then I passed that with 2001. Films that are better from the books they adapted from. 2002. Seeing someone make it onto the train just in time before the doors close and cheering this little victory. 2003. This song.
and keep on wishing.
2004, any song with an extended drum break. Now, there's the craziest drum break in this section, or in the song. The album ends around like 4 minutes, but the song continues for another 5 with insane musicality. Have you guys ever heard I'm a Man by Chicago? 2005. I'm a Man by Chicago. 2006. Final Records. Now, I'm not being super serious, but pretty serious when I say that it is better. The sound quality, feeling the weight of the album in your hands, getting to read through the sleeve notes, best feeling ever. 2,390. People who can't sing but either don't know or don't care. 4,997. Gifts you actually want and you didn't have to ask for. Falling asleep as soon as you get on a plane and waking up and feeling like a time traveler. 4,998. Everywhere I looked, everywhere I thought. 9,993. Dreams of flying. 9,994. Friendly cats. 9,909. Falling in love. 9,996. Sex. 9,997. Being cooked for. 9,998. Watching someone watching your favorite film. 9,999. Staying up all night talking. 10,000. Waking up next to someone you love. All right, now this was the drum section I was talking about. And just you wait, because it gets way better, because what you're about to hear, bongos. Bongos. Oh, bongo! Oh, okay, so you're actually not getting into this how I anticipated. So, we're gonna be a little bit more Canadian about this. I want everyone to raise their right arm. I'm gonna high five everyone in the room. Oh my gosh. Okay, I lied. Much harder than I anticipated. Don't recommend.
My mom, she would do this. Get carried away. Ups and downs. As a little girl, it was never shyness or thoughtfulness that scared me. It was happiness, because it was always followed by, you know. Children with depressed mothers have a heightened activity of stress. Mothers who are withdrawn leave their children to fend for themselves, and it actually changes the chemistry of their brain. The fight or flight impulse. But the real risk, as I perceived it, the real risk that I had felt my entire life is that one day I would feel as low as my mom had felt and take the same action. Because alongside the anger and incomprehension is an absolute crystal clear understanding of why someone would no longer want to continue living. I took Sam back to meet my parents. It was amazing. It was wonderful. It was fantastic. It was awful. It made it seem like I'd exaggerated everything from my childhood. My dad made lasagna and played Cab Calloway records. My mom laughed a lot and sang soul songs at the kitchen piano. She would always sing first. Could you and you just hold this piano for me? Just come over here. One on each chair. Mom would always sing first. She sang Ray Charles. I'm so blue without you here. Why can't you? Dad normally wouldn't sing, but he did tonight. He sang, well, that's life, that's what people say. Riding high in April, shot down in May. And then, quite spectacularly, wake me up before you go. Don't leave me hanging on like a yo-yo. Which he had clearly never heard before because it sounded like, wake me up before you go. Don't leave me hanging on like a yo-yo. Sam sang the last song at my parents' house that night. She sang a Daniel Johnston song called Something's Gotta Last a Long Time. The things we did I can never forget. Some things last a long time, some things last a long time. With Sam's encouragement, the list continued. 123,321 palindromes. People asked if they could read the list, add to it, photocopy it, but it had been scrawled all over so many different things with different handwritings and drawings and asterisks and footnotes and amendments and even the odd diagram. 253,323. The feeling of calm which follows the realization that although you may be in a regrettable situation, there's nothing you can do about it. $525,924. Track 7 on every great record. $777,777. The prospect of dressing up as a Mexican wrestler. Not the action of doing it, but the prospect of it. Sam and I got married just a year after university. Sam got down on one knee. The whole proposal, it was so beautiful. It was, no, in fact, let's do it. We were walking in a park near my parents' house. I was saying how this is where I used to watch Sherlock Holmes as a kid. It was raining. When I felt Sam stop and go on her knee, I thought she was just tying her shoe. But then I turned around. She took my hands and said, "Will you marry me?" I said yes. Let's kiss later. We picked a date, hired a hall, band, caterers, everything. Everyone was there. Even our old vet. We didn't invite him, but he sure came. Dad even did a speech. It was the most amazing, beautiful thing I've ever heard in my entire life. I told him, "Dad, you really don't have to say anything," but he said, no, I want to take this chance to get to know everyone, talk to them. So, in tradition, ladies and gentlemen, please hear from the father of the bride. Say what's in your heart, Dad.
I'm so happy for my daughter that she found love.
I remember every word. Sam and I went on vacation in Whistlebed to Kent. We were so happy. The sun shone every day. We ate the most incredible seafood. We moved to London. We got cars, a job, a cat named Charlotte Scratcher who peed on everything and then ran away. We settled into a routine. We saw less and less of each other. We argued. We were tired. We argued about money. We argued about whether we wanted to live in the country or the city side. We had this one argument in particular. Sam suggested that I talk to someone. Professionally. That made me so mad. I knew what depression was like, and I knew that I was fine. I had a study at home, and I would just sit there and listen to the records and read through the sleeve notes. The lives of other people have always fascinated me. I would always sit and read through the sleeve notes of every record that I read. The trials and traumas behind their music. Tortured geniuses. Ronnie Singer, Donny Hathaway, Albert Eiler. Amazing musicians. All took their own lives. I'm so grateful to be ordinary. Sam told me that I was becoming morose, that I was isolating myself. She encouraged me to continue on with the list, but I found it so hard to notice new things. 826,978. 826,978. 826,978. 826,978. The list was finished. So I packed it all up and threw it away. Just 123,000 short of 1,000,000. It was done. I helped Sam pack her bags. I helped her carry her boxes to her car. I looked at her as she drove away. That horrible feeling when you know that something is wrong and it can't ever be fixed. That trapdoor feeling, swinging wide open. Fight or flight, or stand as still as you can. She left me a note written in an album sleeve. She knew that when I wanted to think of her, I would look for that one Daniel Johnston record. Her note said that she loved me and that when I was ready, we should try again. But I didn't find that note for 7 years. So the night I found that note, I did one of the oddest things I've ever done. Miss Patterson? I know you've retired and I know it's late and I'm sorry for calling, but I called the school and I know that you've retired because they told me and they gave me your number. But I know this is inappropriate, but I'm an ex-student of yours. I was the little girl with the list. Do you remember me?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
You had a sock puppet. Ringo, was it? Do you remember?
Yes, I think so.
I know this is gonna sound really odd, but would it be possible to talk to Ringo right now?
Hello.
Hi, Ringo. How have you been?
Good. How are you?
Well, I'm talking to a sock dog on the phone, so apparently not great.